Fernanda Dantas. I am International Affairs Manager at CBL and the Brazilian Publishing Manager. It's fostering to export of Brazilian publishing content. It's a partnership between CBL, it's the Brazilian Book Chamber, and the Brazilian Agency for Promoting Export and Investment, Apex Brazil. I'd like to remind you that we have an agenda every day at 11 up to tomorrow inside this partnership between the Brazilian publisher. And tomorrow we'll be talking about Brazilian indigenous literature. And our team will give you all the information to sign up will be here on the chat. Mind you that we have a playlist which is very special on Spotify so that you can follow your readings. And tomorrow we will also have a special partnership on the chat online. We are going to have our Caipirinha hour that will be happening virtually and the two roundtables with Scott and Socorro Alcioli and Emilio Fryer. All this agenda will be on the chat here. And today I am going to introduce you a partnership between illustrator and writer in our children book. We have two illustrators and our moderator, Coelho. Isabel Coelho. Isabel is PhD and compared in literary literature and French literature. In addition to she works at Kodak Infant, and now she is a publisher of FTD Education. So, Isabel, the floor is yours, and I wish you well a great discussion. Thank you, Fed. Thank you, Brazil Publisher, CBL, Apex, Brazil. It's an honor to be here in this event. We are trying to reinventing ourselves. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for those who are listening to us, attending this session throughout the world. It's a great honor to talk about this topic, which is really good and fundamental for the development of not only the children literature and the illustrated books that is well known as a type of work focused on children reading and have children as a reader in mind, but it can be also used by any age. All the representativeness of artists, writers, they are here today to talk about this topic in a serious and professional way. And this kind of work enchants and tampers with the emotion of many people, regardless of their ages. As we have four participants, I'm going to introduce you to them, one of the speakers, and then I give them the floor, and we go in sequence. And at the end, we have a discussion. I'll start with Tino. Are you okay, Tino? Yes. Val and everyone, our peers here for having this conversation and everyone attending this session. It's an honor to be here. So Tino is a writer. He's a renowned writer, journalist, storyteller. Some of his books were awarded by finalists. It's a great Brazilian award, Jabuti Awards. He's part of the third best books of Crescer magazine, and he participated in catalog, a Bologna catalog. He has many things to talk about him. It's endless, his list. Tell us about your experience as a writer, Tino. And if you can wrap up with a topic to talk about your experience as illustrator, specifically if you in this writing exercise, if you have in mind this place to be a co-author, co-writer as an illustrator, or if your writing is more independent and this partnership starts in another way. Well, let's start. I come from a universe that is artistic and also out of these traditional writing, which is the music. Initially, my background is as musician. I've been working with it since I was 16, and after I started working with a reading fostering project, fostering reading in Brasilia. It's called Roedores de Livros. In this project, looking by my side, looking at the mediators dealing with illustrated books, I noticed this, what you said, Belle, that these books, they weren't books that, to my mind, they were children oriented because I saw myself really involved in it. So this was the relation. I stopped touching on the project and I started reading with the children there, and then I got involved emotionally speaking, with illustrated books, and I started publishing my stories and making other people do what I did to get books written by myself to read it to other people. So this was my first dream as a writer. It was a kind of envy, I may say so, that I had about the writers. So I have over 10 years of book publishings, and this media is an illustrated media. It's called that way, and it comes from illustration. Before anything else, it may not have text. It's crazy because I have a book that I wrote and it was illustrated by Homo that doesn't have a text. It's a confusion to think about the the writing of that book, the copyright of it. People get confused. And I started thinking that I could leave space in the text so that the illustration would talk to me, that the illustrator would be my partner, indeed, in that book, in that story. So this is a gift for me. It is a discovery to come from the traditional place of a writer, and my mind broadened with illustration. It's good that I don't know how to illustrate. In addition to having great partners and make friends throughout the way, throughout my journey, I had the fortune to write a book with Ana Paula. She's my partner in Roedores de Livros project, and Sandra as a great partner building up room space to work on Tapete Vermelho. It's our book. We have one more minute. I'd like you to talk a little bit about this music influence in your writing, if you still bring that.
Minutinho e meio aqui. Trago, eu tenho uma compulsão de fazer.
Yeah, yeah, I love creating, making song, writing songs related to the books. This has just happened with Lau Cunha, a partner I have. He called me. I was composing a song. We composed the song together, and then the book, and then we extended it. So sometimes, even if the construction of the song is not rhymed, I go after the rhythm, and the rhythm is in the text, and it must also be in this in the part of flipping the page to invite the reader to a ride. Otherwise, we lose the focus of things. I'll get to this topic to introduce Sandra. Sandra is from São Paulo. She's an architect, and after she studied illustration, visual arts,
Faz trabalhos para
she
revista.
works for magazines. She paints fabrics as well, books. She loves illustrating poetry and image books. And these are her main objects of study. Sandra, taking these that Tino said, if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your work, and talk about the rhythm, because one thing is drawing that is static, another thing is when it is inside a narrative, it not only needs to follow the text to the story itself, the narrative, but also notice these calmer moments, accelerated moments. How does illustration help on this leading of the rhythm and the sound going beyond its meaning? I'll start showing some images because I think they help me tell a little bit about what I want to say. Let me share my screen here with you. I noticed that in this book, there was something really interesting. Tino said something interesting. He says that he leaves much room for the illustrator to create. There is a part of the book that he tells the reason why the red carpet is so special. It is why it is so special. It's an object that in the project Roedores de Livro, they use it to put the children around this carpet to tell stories. And then he starts talking from the red pigment to say how much it is important, how important the red carpet is. He starts talking about the pigment, red. He starts talking about the red. It was a color that was used because it was possible to get red color from some oxides available. And then I started to go on a trip through many places that I had repaster coloring. I got some painting from Piauí State, northeast of Brazil, African caves. I started traveling around. It's a parallel between the book and trips from my curiosity based on my research and curiosity that the text brought to me. And then I feel that as I started by the pigment, I could reach this idea of putting these dots there, and the dots will create the fabric, the carpet. And then I'd like to mention something that makes sense in this marriage between the illustrator and the writer. So I had recently gone to Mexico, and there I went to a place where carpets were made. I went to an artifact house. They made carpets there. They put on my hand. They were explaining to me how they got the red color. In the book's case, he says that the pigment is taken from that muscle, and there they got this pigment from a kind of animal. There are insect. It was really interesting because she squeezed it insect on my hand, and there was a red dot, and that came to my imaginarian side as the pigment as a dot, a circle, and I came from there. There were some curiosities from my mind that gave me room to bring that to life. And there is a part in the book that he tells the story why the red carpet is so important. And when it gets to this point, he says it was what Anna learned from her father. He brings the character closer to the text, and I brought the drawing closer. I zoomed on the food, for example, and then illustration tries to bring things closer. I think this is what we do. Look, that's the picture. It's a kind of dance. Is there any illustration for you to show us without giving a spoiler? Yeah, I'll stop my sharing because I'm spoiling the surprise. Yeah, just to see one illustration to give an example of this pace, this rhythm, this dance between the text and the image. Do you have an example of that? For example, let me go back. So I will go back, but I will not show everything, okay?
Ele só me deixa. Ele só me deixa. Mas a gente tá vendo. Agora não
Yeah, we can see it. Not anymore. We were seeing it.
Só minutinho, gente, que eu acho que eu vou
Just a minute. So let me see to go back what I do. Sandra, just to ask you a question before that.
Na sua experiência,
In your experience today, what do you like the most? What do you think it's easier or harder to illustrate texts from writers that are renowned and the late ones, or to have a dialogue with the writer and be able to build it using forehands?
Uma preferência, digamos.
I don't have a preference.
Subjetivo, eu acho que
it's something subjective. It's a kind of a marriage of curiosity. When I started reading this book that started in the caves throughout the world, it wasn't a specific cave that I would have to create the drawings of that place. It is about caves around the world, and it gave me room to do research throughout the world, around the world. Let me see if I find one. Oh, that page was beautiful. This one, the other one of the caves. This one, at that time, one of the most used color was red, obtained from the blood of animals and iron oxides. So red starts showing up in the text and the image. And after, I don't know. For example, here, I chose to pigment the trees in reds. Maybe it doesn't make much sense, but it's because we are talking about it. So to make people get into the color itself. And there's something that is good. We have this history part that I try to bring it in a visual narrative that is historical. We start from rupestre painting Egypt, Greece, Greece phase reference. It goes through history up to the point that we get to the carpet and feet, and it goes through other place. At least to my mind, we skip a historical place and we get into the book story that we tell on the carpet.
Segura aí, a gente vai passar
Okay,
pro
Sandra,
Thiago.
we are going to Thiago now, and then we come back to talk about the book. Okay, Thiago?
Bom dia, Bel. Bom dia, todo mundo.
Olá,
Good morning.
Bom dia, boa tarde,
Bell, everyone.
Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite.
Yeah, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. So here we have many places. Everybody is in a different place right now. So Thiago, you are a designer since 2005. You've been working specifically on this children youngster universe creation. You work with illustrations. You develop illustration. You are a partner of a studio called QE that develops many things, not only illustration. It would be good for you to tell us your story a little bit and add an element that we saw in Sandra's book, this element of the graphic project. That is, we're not talking only about words, images. There is a composite. We must look at these partners in blank, and this composition must work together. Illustrator many times is also a designer, and to have a designer talking to you helps you to choose the source, the positioning of all the elements in this blank page. How we transit from one page to another, the cover, the core of the book, the end of the book. Tell us a little bit about these particularities based on your story. As you said, I am a graphic designer. I have this background, and you must be curious about the world as an architect. they are professions that are very similar. Since I was a little child, I was very curious. I wanted to do many things at once. My mother bought me a gift. I wanted the scenario that was in the advertisement, and I said, okay, I'll create my own scenario. This thing to project things. This was part of my background since school. I studied in a foundation in São Bernardo do Campo City. I come from Diadema, outskirts of São Paulo. It's a neighborhood there, and in my school, in this foundation, it was really good. It instructed me on many things: agriculture, workshops. I am a person who loves learning about many things, ceramic. I love doing many things, several things, and understand the process of things to get to my outcome, my goal. So that helped me in my profession as graphic design to think about a solution. And for that, you must know how to create the phases. It wasn't different to work on a book. I started my career as a designer on internet, and after I got to know the other parts of design, animation, products. I was thinking about everything, and one day I had a project at university to create an illustrated book, illustration subject, project subject, and then I got in touch with literature. I didn't write, so I took ownership of an now do Antunes called Culture. I have a book, and based on this book, I started expressing myself. This generated a lot of curiosity that made me study more of that. I went after people who did that, and I was with Divan Moraes and Mirella, two artists, and that they encouraged me to work at this dialogue between image and text and graphic project. So I have a good graphic knowledge to understand the book, to understand how to build up a book, or project a book, and now I'm learning about how things are being written and how I can illustrate what I want to say with images. And then I wanted to put together all of that. Not all the books is possible to put together all of that. When there is this opportunity, I insist on working on the typography that we are using. The last book that I finished in July by Callis, I designed the typography of the book based on my handwriting. I made the handwriting as a draft, and I thought, oh, this can be the typography of the book. I used knowledge I have from design to put it in the book. For example, the paper, all of these helps in the quality of the product you're going to hand in, you're going to deliver, because the book gets to people's house, it gets to the hand of a child, and it has a very big potential of empathy. You must do that carefully. You choose the paper, the way you're going to print it, to transcribe the original. For example, illustrators. There are some books that I do it manually. If you don't put the original one to the mass production, it's going to a machine to print 1,000 images. It may end up the project of your book and the illustration intention. When I use Aquarel project, as we have a color density, aquarel, you can use it in a more dense way, not clear colors, can be bright colors. And on paper, it doesn't have shine. You cannot use a shiny paper because you lose the characteristics of your original paper. This is the point for designers to have and to have the control of that. It's really incredible.
Não, desculpa te interromper, mas é só.
Sorry to interrupt you, Thiago. I'd like to make an observation to develop this topic. You said a very strong sentence. It's when you found this illustration path, you started to express yourself. So there is a strong ownership there in this work. And likewise, thinking about other details that are part of your expression as artist, there is this care that you have about the reader when you mentioned that the book is going to the house of a reader and it's going to be a surprise and so on. So the designer work itself that comes from projection, the desired, I don't know how to make this translation into English, but the root is the same. But your talk was really beautiful. And to continue to follow this line of thought, we have some requests for you to show a little bit of these works. And if it's possible for you, I don't know if you have access to the chat, you can put here your Instagram for your fans.
Eu tenho sim.
Você estava preparado para mostrar alguma coisa?
Eu tenho alguns
I don't know
livros
if you
aqui.
were prepared to show something. I have some books here as we are talking about transcribe to put the original to the original books. We have a school for enchanted books. This was a specific book that I did totally digital. I did it from the sketchings, drafts, and to the end on computer. This is a book that I have with Arnaldo Antunes. It's called Cultura. Can you put it closer to the cam? Okay, it's better now. So the care that I had to have to transput the original that I had in aquarelle
Pro livro, foi
to the
tratamento,
book,
processo de experimentação
it
muito grande.
was an experimental process which was very long. People say, oh, you use only scanner. No, this book was photographed. I did technical experiments with photography. I had some help from photographer friends. I had an assistant who was really good at it. She could help me choosing the right lens to showing me how to light the original, and then I did the treatment and put it in the book. This is the result of this work. This book has a curiosity. When I projected it, it was small, a quarter of its size now. I did it totally this way. The editor saw some illustrations and he said, oh, this book has an image power. It's really huge. Let's make this book bigger. Then I changed the format. I illustrated the book with another proposal using the same ideas that I had with my first drawing. I found the work interesting. First, Arnaldo didn't know that I was producing the book. He only knew about it when it was ready. I gave it to him and I said, let's go after a publisher. And he said, yes, let's do so. When I found it, it was a talk between myself and the publisher. Oh, I said, oh, I want to redo it. When I projected the book, it was 3 years before getting a publisher. So I want to show my best design. Sometimes the editor helps, sometimes they deserve, but a good editor helps a lot. Okay, so now Eliandro is going to tell his version about his story. What is it like to work with Thiago? Eliandro, are you okay? Yes, everything okay? So he's a writer, storyteller, a reader trainer, and he has this reader training. He's a finalist of Jabuti Award into categories, and the book won for its best as the best illustration, and he also received an award from Finiligi Silver Top. He has a good background. Leandro, tell us about this relation between text and image. Tell us a little bit about your trajectory and this illustration story. How does it fit in your fictional universe? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. I have for having this opportunity to talk to you to talk about literature and illustration. I'm a story with books. It's a little marginal. I'm the seventh child from illiterate parents. Books in my house weren't important. I didn't have encouragement to read. I was born in the 70s. Illustrated books weren't the way they are today, this big production that we have on a national level. And up to the time I turned seven, I didn't know about books. I didn't know which color it was and let alone how to read it. It was at school. My teacher had a box of books. It was a rainy day. We couldn't go to the streets because my school was very small. We didn't have a covered area to hang out together. And that day, the teacher said that whoever wanted could get a book from that box. And I had this curiosity, as Thiago said, inside me. I got a book and started reading. I couldn't finish the book, but it was an opportunity to trigger me, to encourage me to read. And I found a public library in my city. I went there. I started looking at those shelves filled with books, people reading books, holding books. It was a completely different world to me, different from my reality. It was a world I wanted to get to know. I got a book and I took it home. It was a book that I could read under a tree. Do you remember the book? Yes, Aladdin and the amazing lamp. I started rubbing the coffee kettle.
Esse negócio aí, hein?
Yeah, was there a red carpet there? But on that day, she taught me how to do the dishes. She thought that I was trying to learn how to do the dishes, but I learned that day. And I didn't know that inside that object, I could have so many worlds, characters to live my own reality many times. And it was the book who gave me its hand and pulled me away. And then I grew up and kept on reading. And one of my jobs as adults was in a library of a school, and I was a storyteller. And in order to tell stories, I read a lot, and then I started questioning the end of stories, behaviors of characters. It was very natural inside of me. And there was a moment that I thought I could produce something that could be read. The writer doesn't want to write. The writer wants to have his story read. So I created my first book. I sent it to Cali, São Paulo. Cali approved it. And they said, "Do you want to make the illustration?" And I didn't draw anything. And I started the process of understanding how important illustration is for my text, the expression of other artists inside my art. And I knew that one thing that I didn't like was that the image would reproduce what was already in the text. I thought it was a waste of time and space. It should be more than that, but seemed with the text. The first book I wrote, the first story I wrote, the illustrator had never done any illustration of books. It was a friend of mine from Porto Alegre city. He painted pictures, and together we created the book. The experience I had on reading, I had been an analyst on literature for children literature. I like it because typically we write to an audience that is not the decisive audience. So who is going to decide the books that children are going to read is the teacher, family members, a friend, a relative. We must write to that adult, to the childhood that is dormant, is asleep inside of them. And right after Kali asked me one more text, it was when I wrote A School for Enchanted Prince Príncipes Encantados in Portuguese. It was my partnership with Thiago. I didn't know him very much. We talked about graphic project based on his works and cover because the cover gave a tip who was the narrator of the story. It was a game during the story, and Thiago noticed that. And many times in the illustration, this narrator is present in a hidden way so that children can build up who the narrator of the story is based on the characters and the scenarios. And Thiago had a sensitiveness. It was so big and in the same time so strong that he chose a palette of colors for the skin of the princess. That was a major point, a highlight. He had a black princess that in the text, in no moment, and this princess has a strong personality that in our gathering with the readers that we had in São Paulo, Thiago and I, children wanted to know more about this princess because she came up at the end of the story. Because of this game that we joked around, we have the second books. It's the school of disciplined princess. It's a different princess. And because of that, we go to the third. It's a trilogy. Oh, success, a blockbuster. It was bought by Malta, and we are really happy with this work. And we found out the importance. Oh, we have foreign edition. So it was a marriage, as you said. It's an important topic. This partnership was so good that it bore many fruits to us. I'm really happy to have this freedom to talk to the illustrator, to this artist. Very good. Thank you, Eliandro.
Aqui eu tinha umas perguntas aqui guardadinhas, mas eu vou.
I have some questions here. I'll ask one.
Eu ia falar telespectador, olha só.
I would say viewers, from the viewers. Someone who is watching us right now. It's the following: in your professional career as creators, what was the biggest failure that became the biggest success as a professional growth? It's a question to everyone. I don't know if you had an experience like that. Maybe it's the experience of a learning that brought a learning to you.
Quem gostaria de se arriscar
Who
primeiro?
would like to risk that? I can tell you a little bit about my experience as a reader of my writing. I learn a lot from my readers. I do gatherings, and there are many things that I hadn't noticed in my image writing and work. When the book is ready, it belongs to the reader, individually speaking. And that story hits people differently, and the interpretation is individual. And not always the person must like my story. The person may hate my story. Even a hatred, a feeling that comes from a story, it means that the story worked.
Tino, você ia falar.
Tino, you would say something.
O exemplo que eu posso dar.
I think the example that I can give about growth is to understand the relation with a note that we receive from the publishers.
A gente tem uma percepção que tem a ver com isso.
We have many times a perception related to what Eliandro said, that the story is really good because it's a story that reflects on it. When it reflects a lot from us, it's the most dangerous part because we see ourselves there and we need to leave that box. The editor, the publisher role is that to notice how this story goes to everyone so that everyone could have this freedom when reading. And I have some examples because to receive the no, it's a part of the writer's work. There are the no's, the basic no's oh, we can't publish it now because our grid is here only for 2033, and there is a note saying, oh, you can put something more here. What if we go to this place? You learn how to deal with it. You learn that with that, you can create a story to several people to the world, and not only your story will be there. It can be told in another way. I think time has helped me to realize that better. Yeah, the stories come from us, but we must understand that it goes to the world, and this is precious. This is a learning. This was a learning. Thiago, Sandra, would you like to make an observation?
Quero fazer uma observação breve, na verdade.
Just a brief of observation. When you say bad experience, it wasn't a bad experience. I have a book, Eu Me Machuquei, I got hurt. Uh, I didn't think about writing a book about that. Brick Book invited me for a graphic project. It's a cartoon book. It has a band-aid. And they said, write a story about that. It was just the story here. And when I finished the book, I didn't like it. I felt I felt a little bit prostituted, but I had fun writing it. I have a relation with music, rhymes, ukulele. I play it, so that's why my books they have rhymes. And I had fun creating rhyming, and I delivered the book. To my surprise, was the reception from the audience, from the readers, and people loved it. The book was a blockbuster, was a success, and I started seeing the book on friends' house, and I thought to myself, I can't believe that I created a book. I didn't like it, and it was a success. It's not because the person hired you to do something because it means you were doing something wrongly. It's not like that. As artists, we must understand that if they are hiring you, it's because you have something good to say. Yeah, it's different ways of working. And I started accepting that and see myself as a creation professional. You put the idea in the world, it mustn't be the most perfect thing, at least for you in the world. You must express your ideas, and then you can understand how the audience is going to react to it. When you do this with truth, the return, the feedback is good. At first, it was negative. At the end, it was positive, professionally speaking. Thank you. I'd like to encourage you who are attending this session, ask us a question. I'd like to ask a question to the illustrators that we have here today. Going back to our topic, taking the example that Sandra showed on this testimonial, that there was an experience to having gone to Mexico and got in touch with this insect that has a pigment, and having this experience that led you to how you would lead the illustration of this book. Starting from this point, my curiosity would be to the extent that the illustrator develops a language. We look at it, and we know that that illustration belongs to Sandra, Thiago, or not. Each book, you do it in a different way. You have a different research. How do you feel about this identity search by the visual part, or if it's pegged to the kind of text you're illustrating? So in my case, it has much to do with the text. I don't have a favorite technique. I have line drawing. It's the way that I draft idea, that I do some sketchings to start the work. And this work I did, it was very interesting because I wanted to highlight the designer of the book, Suzaki, and the two editors who participated. First, they noticed that there was something in my drawing that matched Annie's work. Sorry, I hadn't mentioned them. And they gave me freedom to create, the freedom that is given by the text, that gives the room to for the illustrators and the designer saying, oh, I did the text like this, but if you want you can change it to this side, to that side. You have this maneuver room. This collaborates a lot. The editor, he sent the text to me and he gave me freedom, and then he started working more freely. And you think about yourself, what you have to add to that book. You have the personal things that you add to it, and the language. There is a conductor wire, one thing connecting the other. And in this case, as I wanted to represent the pigment and I got to this squared format, I chose a crayon to make the square that way. So the material comes later, at least to my mind. Thank you, Sandra. It was very good.
Uma identidade, sempre existe uma identidade, mas ela
You always have an identity, but there is room for inspirations from what the book asks. I don't know if Thiago wants to say anything about that, the illustration experience and techniques, either they are the same in all the books or you change the language or the characteristics varying according to the text. Yeah, I'm a restless person, and many illustrators, when they get in touch with this point, they get desperate. Sometimes this search, this pursuit to find your style becomes a brand, a trademark. I don't have that. I have aquarelle books. The book with Eliandro was the digital one. Can I share my screen just to set an example of this digital book I made with Eliandro? Oh, it's not this one. You can have an idea how the book starts from a sketch. And this book was a technique change. I was creating it. I'm going to show it. You can see the pages here. It would be an aquarelle book. In this process, you can see the sketches that I did using pencil. You can see my screen, right? Can't you? Yeah. Yes, we can. And here you can see a moment. I'm going walking you through it quickly. You can see clearly the moment that I changed. And here I started working in a digital way to try it. At a moment, I did an experiment and I thought, oh, this is going to work in this book. And then I started to create the sketchings digitally. This changed completely the ending and of the book, the conclusion of the book. I'll stop the spoiler. So this pursuit for a style, the book asks it. As you are working on it, this PDF shows it well. I was doing the things the way I used to do it, doing sketches on drafts on paper. And in addition to the research that I do about the text that I'm working with, I have other parallel works and maybe another work that I did influences on what I'm currently working on. Very good. Based on what you said, I'll ask you a question from a person who's participating in this session. How do you deal with the books when the book is ready, concluded. This project was concluded. It goes to the shelves, or you revisit the book and you want to look at what worked out, what didn't, if there is any learning regarding that.
Para todo mundo?
For everyone?
Olha só, então eu vou começar aqui.
Okay, I can start.
Eu visito muitas escolas.
I visit many schools.
Esse contato com as crianças.
And by getting in touch with children, all the books, they go through them. Sometimes you take one book and some books, you have some books in the library, and you have contact with the books you made to be in touch with these books you concluded. It's really important, but I don't think about the things that didn't work. I think that if the book is published, it worked out, you know? And what I can favor there is these to show other sides. Our books there, the red carpet, tapete vermelho. Initially, we didn't have a direct contact with Sandra because it was the editor's work, Gil and Paulo. But when we knew it was Sandra, we thought, wow, what an award, what a gift we are receiving. And at the end, we thought, I think it would be worth to give a tip to Sandra that this ending, we wanted to say this. And this talk was with the editor, and the editor conveyed this message to Sandra. If I had talked to her straight, when you said a good editor may save a book, it must be present. It may make this book to transform, to make it to be really successful. My first book with Lau Cunha at 4 hands is becoming now in a book at 8 hands because the publishing, they decided, oh, it's a text with the interference of another text. One writer gets into the text of the other writer, and the editor thought about it. We didn't think about it, that the illustrator would get into the illustration of the other one. So it was really good. I know this book, Tino. There is the fingerprint of FTD and the whole group. So flipping the page, red carpets, they have that. These things work. The book is published, it worked out. So we must stamp these things out. And more important than anything, when you're talking with children to talk about a book, mind you that the book is not made single-handedly. So you must put I behind. We must thinking about us. Sandra is talking about the designer, the editor, the illustrator, the advertiser. There are so many people who work to make the book right. Sometimes the tip of an editor to a narrator may save the book because the way it is, maybe the book doesn't reach so many people. There is a detail that is going to save the advertisement of that. It's good to talk about this relation. It's a collective one. Thank you. This is important to talk about the several hands who work in the book, not only on the object, but the whole chain it represents. Sandra, what about you to revisit a work that is already made? Maybe you may say that I am pulling things to one side, but it's not. Oh, a few books that I think that it's perfect. I'm very critical. When I finish a work, I'm thinking, oh, I could have thought about this, about that, but this is a book that I was satisfied with. We too, we too. One thing that I didn't mention about the relation between a writer and illustrator is that Tino, in this email that he sent to me, talking about the project Roedores de Livro, I learned the love for the project storytelling that he had these generated that cover the cover of the book, as it is just a pinch of conversation, and there is this conductor wire among them. So there's one email that he sent to me. These short conversation generates a reference to create the image. We have 5 minutes. We have 4 minutes for Thiago and Eliandro to finish their answers, and then we can say goodbye, okay? So I'll ask Thiago and Eliandro to give a quick message answering the question. I think it is very important to revisit our books as all the books. Every time we open a book, we see it in a different way because we are different every day that goes. As a writer, when I reread it, yes, I think, oh, I could have done better always because on that day we're better than the day before because of every source you read and you drink from. It's also important when we start reading our work from the beginning to where we are, we can see the trajectory, the growth trajectory many times, and our we getting mature in our writing. So it is fundamental to make this to revisit. It's good to revisit, but looking at it as a reader, yes, for sure. Without a reader, nothing has sense. I know I wasn't invited for the conversation. Oh, when we used to go to school in this situation that we are now, we are not going. So I saw projects that we create, and we see the work that children do based on the projects. It's really emotional. I stay at the back of the room and I get emotional all the time. And as an illustrator, you read the whole book and you produce an art. It's wonderful. It's an incredible teacher's work with everyone. Congratulations on it. Yesterday was the Teacher's Day. It's good to remind them. So, Thiago, um, what is it like to revisit the concluded books? I have the same sensation of Sandra when I revisit it. I want to improve it. It's something from designer artists that you look at it and you think that you could have done much better. As I said, my other book story. Sometimes, if you leave the book in the world to wait for the reaction of people, it's the best thing for it. You revisit it and you learn some points you may improve, and you allow him to work. When I had this experience with Eliandro with Prince Schools at a school, we presented the book that at first we thought, oh, we did the book, we had a deadline, we made it. But when the girl got the book and in front of us, we would sign it. And she said, I love the princess. She's like me. I looked at Eliandro and said, what a gift, what an award. It's really rewarding. This student, I think she was the only black girl in the classroom, and she said, "I love the princess because she looks like me." So that was really rewarding to me. So we must allow the book to do its best to deal with people. Create this friendliness and this connection with people. Okay, Thiago, unfortunately, we don't have much time to talk about this topic that Eliandro brought. It's important to have diversity in the presentation of the drawings. This is a strong discussion here in Brazil, and increasingly the creators, they are raising their awareness to bring books that address this diversity, representing our culture. We could have a roundtable only to talk about this topic. So that's my tip for Brazilian publishers, CBL, Apex. I'll say that this agenda continues tomorrow at 11 to talk about indigenous literature from Brazil, and there is diversity in our agenda. So Artists, please give your final words, and I'd like to thank the opportunity to be here with you and participate in this agenda with you guys. So say goodbye. Thank you very much, everyone, my friends, you all, to give me this opportunity to hear you, to talk to you. I'd like to say that today I'm better than yesterday for having participated in this discussion. And I'd like to tell everyone that our Brazilian literature is a beautiful literature. We have many stories to tell from our country, our indigenous, white, black people, our whole population. And more important than the book is the reader. I hope that we continue creating our writers. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Eliandro.
Bom, vou por aqui então. Queria agradecer a todo
I'd like
mundo.
to thank everyone who participated with us. Sandra, it's always good to be able to see you. Thiago, it's a pleasure to meet you. Very strong hug for you. Brazilian publisher, thank you. Editora do Brasil, to be together in these wonderful books, awesome books. Wish you health to everyone, and I hope that we meet in person to talk about literature.
Mais gostoso.
Eye to eye, it's much better. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It was a great pleasure to be part of this group. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the opportunity of this space to be able to talk in a book, Frankfurt Book Fair, CBL, Apex, Brazilian publishers. I'd like to give my Instagram address is at Thiago Lopes Mateus, Thiago with a TH and Mateus without H, or at Studio Kiwi. It's on the chat. Yes, I put it on the chat. If you want, you can access the website, my Thiago Lopes Mateus website, and Studio Kiwi, which is my studio. There you can learn a little bit more about my work. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good book fair.